Hello friends, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you a Dota 2 7.16 patch analysis video from the perspective of an offlaner. Okay, so first and foremost, we have Valve saying that they're not going to be doing the bi-weekly patches after after TI actually happens. And I think this is a direct nerf to Pudge, but I'm just kidding. But this is just Valve. They dip their feet in the water with certain types of changes, and sometimes they don't like how cold it is, and they just don't do it ever again. I have a feeling that Dota Plus is another one of those things, but I mean, who knows with Valve? They work in mysterious ways. Anyway, real changes. So bounty runes, team gold reduced from 40 plus 3 gold per minute to 40 plus 2 gold per minute. So this is a direct nerf, in my opinion, to the current state of the offlane, just because offlaners would dual lane and you would secure usually those two offlane runes, and now they literally just give less gold, straight up less gold. So it's just a straight nerf. However, if solo offlaners become more relevant in the meta, then this is a nerf to the safe lane, because it's just a nerf to whoever's using the resources to secure those runes, because you're still going to use those resources to secure that area of the map. Don't get me wrong, you still want to do that for sure, because you're not going to secure nothing in Dota, but now it's just you're getting less for doing that. So it's just a direct nerf to whoever has the advantage in an area. And right now, the offlane is usually advantageous for the offlaner and whoever's dual laning with them. Movement speed talent changes. This is just one of those things where Valve needed to like clear the board for a very specific type of talent, just like they did with the respawn talents. They just felt too broken in general, so they changed everything. I would say that in terms of offlaners, this really doesn't affect us, just because the heroes that got nerfed in terms of the offlane, like Nature's Prophet, he's really relevant right now because he's really strong at dual laning, really strong laner, and you don't need this movement speed talent on this hero anyway. Something like Beastmaster, he did go for it, but also as an offlaner, you get these items that give you movement speed as well. You get phase boots, you can get drums, you have a lot of gold to go around, so really like a 5 movement speed nerf is not a huge deal for an offlaner, whereas for a support it might be a little bit bigger of a deal. Okay, base HP regen increased for the following agility heroes. Once again, this also might seem like something that's not a huge change, but I think that this one actually is, because this 1.75 HP regen scales with strength, so it might not look like a lot, but number one, it helps with laning on a lot of these heroes, and then number two, the later the game goes, the more this is amplified by your strength, and your strength that comes from items and stats. So something like Pangolier getting buffed, even in like a kind of smallish way like this, it's a pretty big deal, just because this hero was already really great and just, I think, a bit underrated, and now he's got more HP regen in the laning phase, and then as the game scales, he's going to be even tankier, harder to kill. Okay, so melee barracks health increase, not a big deal for the offlane. Roshan attack damage upgrade over time from 2.5 per minute 4 per minute. I would say that this actually, I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but I would say that this actually is a buff to some of these offlaners, just because like if you take a Broodmother or a Nature's Prophet and you use the summons to take Rosh, I mean, the summons would usually take a couple of hits to kill anyway, and you just have a ton of them, and that's really how you tank with tank Roshan with these heroes, and these are great offlaners. So I think that Rosh doing a crap load of damage makes it a lot harder to take if you don't have a hero that can very reasonably tank Rosh without actually taking this crazy amount of damage. I mean, it almost doubles the damage that Rosh does, and that might not seem like a lot, but really, when you're fighting around the Rosh pit and the enemy team is trying to kill you, that damage coming from Roshan is something that really dissuades you from taking it. So this is actually a buff to these kind of summons offlaners: Beastmaster, Nature's Prophet, Broodmother. Blades of Attack, a lot of offlaners went for treads anyway, so I don't think that's a big change. I mean, I didn't see face boots getting picked up that much at all, other than like on Beastmaster. But yeah, I mean, that's a nerf to Beast, but it's, I mean, it's 20 gold. That's not a huge deal. There's been worse changes, and heroes still get picked. Bottle, it's a little bit of a bug fix. Enchanted Mango, this is a much needed change. Everybody's getting like 3 mangoes in every lane other than mid, so this is like a side lane nerf. But I think people are going to just go for a salve, then probably plus 2 mangoes, because really the strength of these mangoes is that they give you this regen, and the amount of mana they give you right now, it's just like they're better than Clarity's. And the offlane, the dual offlanes in particular, like these aggressive fighting lanes, are so intense that having that burst of mana is, you can't just sit around in Clarity. You cannot do that right now. Like, there's so much fighting that goes on. It takes way too much time. You'll lose the lane in the time it takes you to Clarity. So I think that's a big reason why mangoes are getting picked up, and that's a big reason why I think that this change isn't going to be as big as people might think it is. because it's really the mana that makes these items insane. So, Hand of Midas, a little bit of change. Moonshard, a little bit of change. None of these are really a huge deal in my opinion. Nullifier's projectile went too fast anyway. Rod of Atos, not many offlaners pick this item up, but I would love to see this become more of an offlane item. I would say that it's still pretty damn expensive, and a lot of these offlaners would go, people are going for Crimson Guards and things like that. Atos isn't a popular offlane item. However, this Sentry Ward change, this is an offlane buff, I think, at least in my opinion, for how I like to play the offlane. If you buy a Sentry and you bring it to the lane and you de-ward the initial ward where the supports are going to be trying to use that to scout you in the lane, you're going to be able to use one Sentry Ward, and you'll be able to de-ward a potential second ward that comes out, because what always happens, or what happens a lot of the time, is the supports will place a lane ward to try to win the early laning phase, and then as they get more of an advantage in the lane, they'll leave the carry alone. But what do they leave the carry with? A lane ward. So you can actually place one Sentry Ward, and if you don't de-ward that first ward, you could still get the lane ward, or you could de-ward 2 wards if the enemy supports are kind of stupid. But there's yeah, this is a pretty big buff to sentries and offlaners, because of how we use sentries to de-ward and kind of make ourselves safe in that lane. So Shadow Amulet, bit of a nerf, no big deal. Silver Edge, bit of a buff, no big deal. Skull Basher, this was recipe cost reduced. I think it costed too much anyway. And this is a buff to Pangolier for sure. Pangolier loves to pick up this item. Not many other offlaners really pick up Skull Basher, though, that I can think of. Vladimir's mana regen increased, so this is a sweet buff. Once again, this may not look like a lot, but it's almost doubling the mana regen coming from it. And remember, mana regen scales with intelligence. So any buffs to Vladimir's is going to be a buff to offlaners, because it's one of those kind of nice utility cheap items that can still have a lot of impact while not spending a lot of gold. So I think this is a pretty nice change, and you might see Vlad's getting picked up, because a lot of offlaners right now are building these kind of aura items, Crimson Guards, things like that, and the Vlad's is a great addition to that sort of build. Alchemist just makes up for the fact that the bounty runes were changed. Anti-Mage, BAT improved. Might not seem like a lot, but you could actually see Anti-Mage picked up more as a carry, because I mean one of this hero's biggest strengths is this BAT is already so low. So increasing that even more is just great for him. It's just great for Anti-Mage. So a lot of the time the meta will change too, and you'll see Anti-Mage get picked up a lot. For instance, if there's like solo offlaners and not dual offlanes, then Anti-Mage will be even stronger, because he's good at laning against solo heroes. Arc Warden base damage increased by 2. That's a straight buff. Magnetic Field mana cost buffed. When this happened before, he got picked a lot more. So we have potential for Arc Warden as a safe laner. The hero is really good at killing people in the lane, unless you have summons to protect from his Q. So I would say if this hero gets picked up a lot, then you're probably going to see a lot more Nature's Prophets, Broodmothers, dual offlanes, things like that, because this hero can really destroy a solo offlaner. Bane and Feeble reduced. Good, thank God. He's going to be a lot less annoying in that laning phase. Bloodseeker, level 10 talent. Yeah, I mean, these are pretty minor changes in my opinion to Bloodseeker. I mean, 8 armor is a lot, but maybe you'll see this hero start getting picked up at some point. He's definitely on the cusp of being good, but against dual lanes, I don't know about that. Bristleback, pretty minor change because level 25. Broodmother, this is actually a pretty big change to this hero, because I know 30 HP might not seem like a lot, but when you're considering 50% magic resist, okay, against magic heroes, that's 60 HP, right? And then when you're considering the HP regen, that's even more HP, because all you need to do is survive that burst on the spiders, and they'll regen to full HP. So really, this is a big change to Brood, and I think that the previous change to Brood was a big buff to Brood too, because you're able to spam that nuke a lot more, get the same damage from the spiders, even though it got nerfed because the cooldown is less, and now the spiders are worthless to kill. So, I mean, this hero is really good in my opinion. I really think Brood is broken. Centaur Warrunner, base damage increased by 4. That's a straight buff. This hero loves to right-click in the laning phase. This gives him better laning. Outside of that, it's not that huge of a deal, other than kind of for farming, because he's not really a right-clicker. But this is a huge change to him. Hoofstomp mana cost reduced. So this hero was considered amazing before, when his Hoofstomp costed, I believe it was 80 mana or 75 mana, and you could just cast it a bunch of times, and they nerfed it such that you can't cast 2 Hoofstomps at level 1 without being fully out of mana. Like, you literally can't cast the second one at level 1. But with this change, you can. And at level 1 is the best level of Hoofstomp. Like, people leave Hoofstomp at level 1 for so long. So this is really a great change to Centaur, and I think we could actually start seeing this hero get picked up because of these two changes. Like, these are straight up great buffs to how the hero wants to be played. It's not like this sort of bristleback change where it's like, oh wow, plus 30 warpath damage at 25. It's like, it's 25, right? It's a change to buff, but it's like, it's so irrelevant. Whereas this is just relevant from the get-go. Chaos Knight base intelligence increased. You might see Chaos Knight more as a safe laner. I think he was strong before. Really great in kill heavy lanes, and base intelligence increase on him means that you're going to see him stunning you a lot more. Clinkz, I actually do want to talk about this hero a bit. Strafe dodge no longer has a count limit. That's a pretty big deal. The intelligence increase is a pretty big deal for him too, because he actually costs a decent amount of mana. So if this hero gets picked up a lot more, then you're going to see a lot less dual off lanes that just like to sit there and harass, because Clinkz is really, really good at the trading game. So you'll probably see a lot more kill hungry heroes as offlaners, or just ditch this lane altogether, but then Clinkz can probably solo. So really, this hero is susceptible to getting killed, but since this strafe was buffed, you will need to pick heroes that don't abuse projectiles to kill the Clinkz, because it's going to be pretty damn hard to kill him with that 3.5 second strafe. Clockwerk power cogs mana cost increased. In my opinion, that's not the hugest of deals, unless there's some breakpoint that I'm not thinking about where you're not going to have enough mana at level 6 to cast all of your abilities once. I'd have to actually do the math on that, but in my opinion, you'll probably just, I mean, you send out a lot of clarities with this hero anyway, and you kind of go for ganks, walk back to fountain, gank, go back to fountain, and so forth. So not the hugest of deals unless there's one of those breakpoints like I talked about. Crystal Maiden, base damage increase, mana regeneration increase. The reason I'm talking about supports, by the way, is because you could see them in the lane against you. Buffs to her. I don't know if you're going to see, maybe you'll see a lot more dual off lanes, because you could run like a bristleback +1, or I mean, hell, even just throw a hero into the off lane that abuses that spam, like Abaddon Beastmaster, bristleback, and throw a Crystal Maiden in the game, and all of a sudden you've all of this mana regen. It's really strong. And I know it wasn't buffed in terms of you don't give anybody else more mana regen, but maybe if she is, if you're more encouraged to pick Crystal Maiden because you get more regen yourself, then you're going to see that hero buffing the off lane a lot. However, I don't think this is a huge change. Dark Willow, Bedlam cooldown reduced. 45, 35, 30 to 30, and then duration increased. This is a pretty big deal because this hero does so much damage with this ability. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the cooldown was literally 30 before and it got nerfed. It's very weird to see Ice Frog making these changes where he goes back on something, and then Bedlam duration increase. This literally just a straight up more damage, and there's a part of me that thinks that Dark Willow, like the first time I saw Dark Willow's skill set, it's like, all right, this scales really well. This hero's really good with levels, and it has utility, and it has damage in the late game, but it's not a carry. So I was kind of thinking like, oh, it's survivable too. Okay, that's an offlaner, right? And I really think that there's a lot of potential here for her to be an offlaner. I see a lot of NA players, NA offlaners playing this hero as an offlane, but really that's about it. So I think that this is a hero you'll probably see getting picked up a lot more in the offlane, and I think this hero is really, really strong. Dazzle, a little bit of side grades on the poison touch, in my opinion, and then the strength gain was increased. I don't know if that's enough to push him over the edge. I think Dazzle is on the cusp of being really good, but this isn't really enough in my opinion. Sorry, Zyari. And then Death Prophet nerfs. Well, nothing in the side lane, so not a big deal. We don't need to talk about Death Prophet. Disruptor, Thunderstrike cooldown. I mean, that's not a big deal. This hero has been picked as a safe lane support for like 5 years now, so I don't think you'll see Disruptor going anywhere. Doom. This is actually a pretty big nerf to Doom, because you have this change to Inferno Blade where it doesn't scale great, and then you have a change to Scorched Earth where it does scale now. And people were leaving Scorched Earth at level 1 and then maxing Inferno Blade. So this is just Ice Frog kind of dissuading people from going for that build. And that's what made Doom really, really good, was that particular build. Although I do think that the Scorched Earth build is pretty damn good as well. But a nerf to Inferno Blade, I mean, that's the most broken thing about Doom. So, I mean, it's unfortunate. I like this hero, but I think this is a pretty hefty nerf to him. Dragon Knight, not a side laner. We don't care. Draw Ranger, base damage increased by 4. This hero is really good against solo offlaners if she has a tri-lane behind her, and if you can run a whole Drow lineup. I think this hero keeps getting buffed. You'll probably see it getting picked a lot more eventually. Maybe not this patch though, because if you dual offlane into her or you run a Broodmother against Drow, she gets completely screwed. Earthshaker, base armor increased by 1, literally unkillable. I actually really like this hero as an offlaner because you can fissure the enemy's wave, and then your wave will go into their tower, and there's nothing they can do about it, and it's pretty damn broken. So I think that this hero might get picked up not because of this base armor increase, but just because I think that he's really, really good as an offlaner, and you could actually lane solo in the offlane and maybe get something, whereas a lot of these other offlaners can't right now. Enchantress base strength increased. She was way too squishy with the previous changes to her, reducing the HP. And then Enchantress Nature's Attendance mana cost reduced. I still think that her passive is a little weak, so I don't know. I don't see this hero getting picked up too much, even with these buffs. Maybe in 1 or 2 patches from now. Enigma, Eidolons give less. I mean, small change. Gyrocopter, small nerf to call down and small nerf to his damage. I think you'll still see him getting picked up a lot because people are still going to keep fighting at least for a couple of weeks after the patch. Maybe if it goes into a non-fighting, goes into a farming meta, you might see, okay, Gyro's been nerfed enough, we'll just go with like an anti-mage or avoid Battle Fury, something like that. Huskar, life break buff, inner vitality buff. You'll probably see this hero getting picked up a decent amount just because Oracle and Dazzle keep getting buffed in the current patches, and he's really, really good against solo offlaners. So Invoker, invoke mana cost removed. You're going to get Sunstruck a lot more in the laning phase. IO base move, IO just straight up nerfs because this hero is way too strong. I don't think these are big changes, like movement speed doesn't really matter because you're going to be tethered to somebody else and getting their movement speed. These other changes aren't really what made IO broken. What made IO broken is how good the spells are right now at level 1. So I still think that as an offlaner, you're going to be dealing with IO as a support. Kunkka, we didn't really care about Kunkka, wasn't really picked up as a support, was a mid laner. Leshrac, this hero was kind of falling off anyway, as a support and as an offlaner, so I don't really think that these are huge changes. I mean, Leshrac probably should have felt irrelevant in the previous patch anyway, in the side lanes at the very least, and now this is going to make him a lot harder to, because base int reduced means that he's going to have a lot less spammability in that lightning storm, and then making it closer cast range makes him a lot easier to kill. So Lich, Chain Frost damage, I think this isn't enough to super buff the hero into the meta, but there's a lot of focus being put on this Lich's Chain Frost in a lot of the previous patches that are being added, so I do think that Lich is probably going to be in a pretty good spot a couple patches from now, but I don't think you're going to see him supporting against you or supporting with you in a dual offlane scenario until maybe 1 or 2 patches from now. Lycan, bit of a nerf, int reduced, he's a little stupider. Shapeshift, crit damage reduced, not by much. I don't think that's a big deal. You'll probably still see Lycan picked up a lot as a safe laner against you. He's really good with a couple levels. He can just sit there and take a bunch of harass. He's great against those harass lanes. Magnus, this is actually a pretty big deal. Like 460 to 625, that's almost 200 extra range you get on the cleave distance, and the end radius too. So it's like, it's literally just bigger, the cleave. So imagine like a troll warlord or something with the empower on, how much faster he's going to farm, how much scarier he's going to be in a team fight, just cleaving through everybody. He's 200 extra range. It's a Battle Fury. I mean, it's insane. It's just insane. Meepo, Earthbind projectile. I mean, what was his number before? I think Meepo's pretty good, but I think he's more of a mid laner, and I don't think you're really going to see him as a safe laner. I think he's really punishable in the safe lane. Mirana, leap attack speed increased. Mirana, Moonlight Shadow, duration increased. This hero has been getting buffed into oblivion. Moonlight Shadow is a ridiculous ability. I personally think that this hero is a godly offlaner. I am terrible at it, but I think that somebody like Brax, somebody who's actually good at the hero, will make it so obvious, so clear that this hero is an amazing offlaner. That Moonlight Shadow is just insane. I mean, 18 seconds of invisibility, and with the reduction too of the Moonlight Shadow cooldown at level 25. I mean, it's insane. It's just there's insane potential with this hero, and now it gives movement speed. Like, what? It's just crazy. Monkey King Wukong's command armor increased. Let's face it. This is a pretty. I mean, you'll probably see this hero get picked. This hero was already getting picked up as a safe laner, so it's like you'll probably see it get picked up more just because like a slight buff. People get excited to pick a hero. Morph. I don't know why this dispelled on toggles anyway. You just couldn't net this hero, so this is a buff to any of those kind of net heroes like Naga Siren or Doom if you were to pick up a net creep against the morph. So you can actually deal with this hero when he uses the morph as opposed to just not being able to catch the little fucker. Necrophos, irrelevant. I mean, I think this hero sucks. He's just too bad to even warrant getting picked after these changes. Night Stalker, this is a pretty big nerf. This hero was being played primarily as an offlaner. Void no longer applies a mini stun during the day. Well, this hero was really strong because you could apply a lot of pressure in that early laning phase with the Void spam and with a dual off lane. So that's pretty rough for him because you just can't cancel things, can't cancel TPs. I mean, that's all points in the game, but really, in my opinion, this hurts him for that kind of first laning stage period. And then Night Stalker Darkness no longer sets enemy vision to a fixed amount and reduces the enemy unit by vision and ward vision by 25%. That's a pretty huge nerf because, I mean, you could literally look at the math on that. The amount of vision wards give now is pretty significant, and reducing it to a static amount was just insane. That was kind of the most insane thing about this hero, and now it just doesn't do that. It just reduces the vision by 25%, which really isn't that big of a deal because wards give so much vision anyway. Ogre Magi, multicast, is way better now. Gold per minute increased. I actually think this hero could be played as an offlaner if we're still seeing those kind of, hey, let's run at the enemy team with high stats. This hero could be played as a 4 role in dual offlane or as a core. I'm honestly favoring core just because he can actually be really strong with like an Aghanim Scepter and with just with some items. Pangolier. This is pretty crazy actually. Like 15 talent, like Pangolier gets 15 pretty quickly because he flash farms really fast. And plus 2 seconds on Rolling Thunder, that's pretty hefty, man. Like this Rolling Thunder already lasts quite a long time, and you know, plus 2 seconds could be 2 extra hits on somebody. You're bouncing back and forth. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Like this is a huge buff to this hero. And then the swashbuckle damage was literally increased with the 20 talent, and that 25 talent. There's a 35-second reduction to the Rolling Thunder, and then you have it for 2 seconds longer. I mean, this hero's already good. Like the Rolling Thunder was already really good. So I mean, I thought this hero was strong in the previous patch since the Mjolnir got changed. So Maelstrom's like super strong, does the same chain damage as the Mjolnir. I think this hero is really good. Okay, Phantom Assassin, probably not going to see this hero getting picked up a lot. I think it's pretty weak. Phantom Lancer, Doppelganger can no longer be cast while rooted. I don't know why he could do that. That was one of the things that made him such an annoying carry to deal with, was that if you were to use one of these root heroes like an Underlord, he would just jump out of it for some reason, even though every other hero can't do that. Phoenix. I've seen this hero actually get picked up a lot as an offlaner recently, and it's been doing pretty well because this hero is pretty weak in the early levels, and obviously there's a buff to that. But I mean, I honestly think this hero is on the cusp of like, okay, it's good enough in the game where you can sacrifice that pressure in the laning phase, but I still think that if we are going to have those high pressure offlanes, you probably won't see it. I think the only reason that I've seen this in pubs is because there are people that are like specialty Phoenix players. But it's still really good. If you're really good at Phoenix, you can play this hero. Pudge, meat hook cooldown increased. Not a big deal in my opinion because really you're not spamming this ability a lot early anyway because the mana cost is so high. But this is a pretty big deal. 150 pure damage at level 1. Is there an ability in Dota that does more damage at level 1 now? I don't think so. I mean, that's just a ridiculous amount of damage. Personally, I was leveling Rot up. I was going for, I would level up Rot first and then go for Meat Hook until, like, you know, I'd go for level 2 Rot, for example. I would even consider going for level 3 Rot, just go level 3 Hook, level 3 Rot. And this encourages you to do that a lot more. So those Rot changes where it's like Rot sucks mega ass early levels, that's not as much of a big of a deal if you can level it up early because Meat Hook is so good. So I think this is a great Pudge buff, and I'm super glad to see the Ice Frog finally just straight up buff to the Pudge hero, because God knows that's all I can play. Pugna, literal buff. This hero was pretty good in the previous patch, so I definitely think, I mean, Pugna's definitely good. You'll see Pugna a lot this patch just because he was really good before. He was picked up a lot, but he wasn't broken enough to be like, oh, that hero needs a nerf. But he was good enough that you'd still see him in a lot of games if it called for him. Queen of Pain, doesn't really matter. Riki, I think this is all kind of a side grade to Riki because the buffs kind of are outweighed potentially by the nerfs. Sand King, Caustic Finale, slow reduced. That's not that big of a deal for offlane because this hero wasn't really played as an offlaner in the previous patch because of all the nerfs to him. He's played as a 4 because the burrow is still so good. So not really much of a change to offlane other than the fact that, I mean, even as a support, it's not that big a deal because Caustic Finale is not a huge selling point of this hero as a support. So you'll probably still see this hero just as much. Shadow Fiend, mid laner. Silencer, more side grades. Slardar, not a huge buff. I mean, 20 damage. The bash was never really that great. I doubt you'll see him picked up as a safe laner. Slark, pounce damage reduced. once again, this is another thing where it's like, were you really leveling Slark for the, or leveling Pounce on the Slark for the damage? Not really. Sniper has 1400 night vision. That's pretty good, but I think he's a mid laner. Spirit Breaker, HP regen increased. Maybe see more of a dual offlane with Spirit Breaker. Sven, pretty irrelevant changes. Tiny, this hero is completely irrelevant. He sucks mega ass. Very unfortunate because he was fun to play as an offlaner. But he's basically got a bunch of bonus building damage. That is potentially a buff to carry Tiny. That's about it. But the cleave is so bad on the tree now, so Tusk, nerfs, thank God. Still going to get picked though. Treant Protector, living armor, buffs. That's pretty good. Remember, this HP regen scales as the game goes on. So I think Treant, Treant is literally... Treant is so good right now. And, it's weird to me that they buff him because he's just like a scourge in pubs right now. Speaking of scourge in pubs, Undying. Making this hero even more efficient in the early levels. So this is great for him. I think Undying is a really, really good hero in general and great at dual offlaning. Not really an offlaner, but more of a 4-role that could go sit in the offlane. And if you pick him as a support, he's usually played as more of a roamer who just goes and wins the lanes. Where roamers aren't really that great right now. So Ursa, talent changes, not super relevant talent changes. 25 one's kind of cool, but it's not, it's super late in the game. Venge, magic missile cooldown reduced. Venge, wave of terror mana cost reduced. These aren't massive changes to her. I guess this is pretty good because people would leave the magic missile at low level, but it's a couple seconds, and really we're using 2 magic missiles in an engagement. Probably about 2, but what's 3 seconds going to do? It's pretty irrelevant changes. Weaver Sakuchi damage was straight up increased. That's pretty good. I think this hero is one of those heroes that always comes back into the meta just because the nature of Sakuchi is just so strong, so buffing that ability even more is always going to be really good for this hero. I think he's good he's good as an offlaner too because you can go for that kind of Solar Crest plus Aghanim Scepter build, and it's got super utility, or you can just transition to be a carry. Winter Wyvern, Splinter Blast slow increased, mana cost reduced, makes this hero a little bit more efficient. We see a lot of the time these heroes where it's like, oh, their mana cost was reduced to this. It looks irrelevant, but then you realize, oh, this hero can just keep casting this in the laning phase, and it's just insane. So yeah, you might see this hero get picked up as a support more just because the harass potential is there. Wraith King, we're no longer going to see jungle Wraith Kings, thank God. Although I did like that when it was on the enemy team because then I would have a free lane against 2 heroes and their offlane would feed because there's no 4-role. Wraith King summons more skeletons, whatever. Zeus base damage increased by 5, strength gain reduced from 2.6 to 2.3, arc lightning damage rescaled from 85 to 70 at level 1, and then once you level to level 2 it's basically the same. Lightning bolt cast range was increased, and the damage was increased on Lightning Bolt in those early levels as well. So I would say that that's a pretty... that's more of an upgrade to the mid Zeus. He's a little bit squishier, so arguably you would want to go for a Bloodstone more likely, or an early Aghanim Scepter to make up for that, just get more HP. And then you also kind of arguably need levels because you need the Arc Lightning to be leveled to level 2 before it does any significant amount of damage. But the Lightning Bolt cast range is definitely a big deal. Imagine an Aether Lens on this hero, how far away this guy is going to be zapping you from. It's pretty damn far. So I would say that this is probably a bit of a buff to mid lane Zeus, not much of a buff to off lane Zeus, and you probably won't see this hero getting picked up any more than it is right now, just because these changes they're pretty good. You'll probably see him as like a 1 or 2 patch sort of hero. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I do appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.